Hello and welcome to Dream It, Dare It, Do It, Live the Life You Want. This is Jasmine. I'm happy to be here once again. I can't believe I keep doing these. Now, those of you who haven't listened to me in a little while, I've been doing these little short ones now. I'm like doing these little 10-minute episodes. So I've had my first two going on, but today I'm happy to have a guest again. And I've been wanting to ask her to come on, and it was just like it would never happen. And now all of a sudden it's like everybody's talking to me about Wendy. Wendy, did you see Wendy? Oh, I'm working with Wendy. This I'm like, okay. And then Wendy sends me an email and I'm like, this is the time. So
This is the
guys,
time.
I would like to introduce you to Wendy Williams, and she's got some Quebecois root. The L in her name is Langlois. So thank you, Wendy, for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, I'm so glad I haven't heard the word Quebecois in a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Langlois, very nicely done, very nicely done. I have a sister who is, I have three sisters that were 15, 16, and 17 when I was born. And the younger of that set, I'm a nurse and she's a nurse. I kind of followed in her footsteps, her little baby sister kind of thing. And she kept our name, but she pronounced it Langlois, which always made me twitch a little. Don't tell her, but it made me twitch a little bit as opposed to Langlois. She pronounced it Langlois. Um, is
Yeah.
everything okay?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. She was just barking at somebody outside. So,
I see. I see. Oh,
and she continues.
and she
Okay.
continues.
And
Somebody's got her upset.
somebody's walking on her grass.
Oh, just
How,
why? Why do people walk on beauty's grass? I don't get
yeah.
it.
How
But
dare they?
I don't get it. Yeah,
So,
isn't that funny how we've been intersecting a lot in the past few weeks? It's very funny how that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah. So I'm gonna share that. So the first time that I heard Wendy's name is because if you guys go back, and I'm gonna tell my VA who does the video, I'm gonna say put the names. So we first spoke with Lori Corpenos. So put the link here somewhere where they can listen to Lori's episode. And then we spoke with David Cotterill.
Yeah.
And then I have a client from the New York Peace Project, Stuart Hiskowitz, and he's been doing some classes with you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
we've just been like, it's like all the time, yeah, it's Lori and Wendy
Yeah.
again, Lori and
Again.
Wendy. And then Dave sends me an email. I'm working with Wendy. I'm like, what's
Who is this Wendy?
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Let's
That's
meet.
that's funny. That's so funny. Yeah. And it was fun to talk with you just before we started. I didn't realize that you were from my homeland, the French Canadian side of the family. So that was fun
Yeah.
to get connected on that too. Yeah.
You're in
Yeah,
Mass,
this is
right?
great.
You're in
I'm
Massachusetts?
in Massachusetts. Yep, right outside of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we are obviously we're both passionate about this understanding of the three principles, and so we both do what we do in our neck of the woods. And so, you just said that you were a nurse.
I am. Yeah.
So, do
Yeah.
you teach this to nurses?
Yes, right. Actually, right now at the beginning of that, two things I've got going on. One is, well, three things I've got going on about nurses. One is I'm working with Lori Carpenos, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist,
Mhm.
and I'm working with another nurse named Tyson, and her last name just went right out it's
It'll
gone.
come back.
It'll come back. So Tyson, Wendy, and Lori have 8 out of 10 podcast episodes ready to go out into the world. And the name of the podcast is So Clever, Two Nurses and a Therapist. And the goal is to talk with people in the front lines. You know, the three of us are definitely people who've come through the trenches, been on the trenches. Tyson particularly became a nurse during the pandemic. I've been a nurse many, many years. And so the pandemic didn't really have an impact on my practice or myself as a nurse because of the nature of my work currently. But just that whole, there's just a whole culture of in nursing, and other healthcare providers of it's getting tougher. The environment is getting tougher. I'm in the United States, there's a whole insurance industry world,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical, all sorts of things. So there's so many intersections of helping the helper, if you will, shining a light on this understanding for the health and well-being of each individual provider. So because they're like everybody else in the world,
Yeah.
the understanding is we're flipping things around, which is to say life occurs from the inside out. It doesn't, it's not, I have this expression called whack-a-mole. I grew up with whack-a-mole, like managed things like, okay, my sons better get good grades in school so that it won't annoy me and I can sleep at night. And my husband better have a certain level of income, or and my job, like just trying to keep everything going, because if not, it would upset me, or I would get anxious, or I would get, and then to find out that it's actually never worked that way, that our systems are built from the to process life from the inside out. And I got to tell you, as a nurse, nothing made more sense to me as within the first half hour of hearing about these principles. Within 30 minutes of the first time I ever heard about it, it went right down. The Lego piece fit in, got it. I've always known that was the case. It put words, that's a bit strong.
No, but
It takes a while to kind of develop the language or the container, but there was something, truth with a capital T just went right down,
I
right
get you.
down, solid.
I totally understand that because I was a studier of like empowerment and self-development and personal development and all of that, and I read so many things, and when I heard the conversation of the three principles, it was kind of like everything that I'd read all of a sudden made sense. It was kind of like, oh, that's what they were saying there, and that's what happened there, and that's what,
Mhm,
like, it just like
mhm,
made
mhm,
everything in my mind was like all over the place, and there was like one thing that was missing, like this one connection, and
mhm, mhm.
understanding three principle made me go, oh, and I keep discovering it
Yeah. Yeah.
over and
Yeah.
over.
There was another time that that happened in my life. Maybe you can relate. When I was a freshman in college, you know how well, I'll speak for myself. I belly ached through high school, like, oh my gosh, trigonometry, why? And third year French, why? I'm not going to live in France. I'm not going to, or whatever.
Yeah.
History of Western civilization. Why? And then there was a point in time, I think it was even before the first Christmas holiday of my freshman year of college. I was away from home, and I kind of remember, I can physically feel it going, French is related to the history of Western civilization, is related to math, is related to science, is related to biology. Like it was just like this head explosion was like, oh, everything is really, really connected. This isn't, I might have studied them in silos, but now I get what they're talking about. It was like this amazing feeling. And that was similar to, hearing, I've got a great story, hearing George Pransky and Steve Chandler on a video talking. So for those of you who may or may not know
Yeah,
either one of those gentlemen, I'm sure that Jasmine, you know them both,
I do.
at least
But
at
explain
least
who they are. Yeah.
yeah, I will. At least by video, if not in person, you probably know. But anyway,
Yeah.
so my first impression was there was this Rich Litvin is a guy that is specializing in coaching businesses. And so he said, and my mentor and coach is named Steve Chandler, and he's just amazing and wonderful. So you know how YouTube is.
Yeah, of course.
Follow the breadcrumbs. So I went over and found Steve Chandler on YouTube, and he was having a conversation with George Pransky, and he prior to talk, no, it doesn't matter. Steve Chandler uttered the words, blah, 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 blah. And George Pransky, the most impressive or talented or the preeminent psychologist of the 20th century. So I said, really? I might not be a psychiatric nurse, but I would think that at the age of 55, 58, whatever I was at the time, I think I might have heard about the preeminent psychologist of the 20th century. And I don't remember that name. So I went off and looked for a George Pransky video, which didn't take long. And within 2.7 nanoseconds, I took my button and I put the video on pause and I said, what part of Massachusetts is George Pransky from? I could hear his accent,
Yeah,
clear as a
yeah,
bell.
yeah,
And it turns out he does, he was born and raised like 20 minutes that way, that kind of thing, right? No.
yeah.
So that was kind of funny. But the video that I happened to click on with George talking was George and Steve side by side, like you and I are right now talking. And Steve Chandler, if you don't know them, so Steve Chandler says, so George, you and I, we have a future in making audios for people who want to go to sleep because everybody laughs about how slowly you and I speak. And I was like, yeah, you're not kidding. Wrap it up, boys, wrap it up. Now, this is before I knew that you could speed up a YouTube video. So I remember going, oh my gosh, I'm loving what they're saying. And this was the video within a half hour. I was like, got it. Got it. I've always had that perspective as a nurse that I knew people had innate health. I knew that I'm just pointing them and being a support while they need to get from point A to point B with their broken arm or their cancer or their whatever, right? So anyway, that being said, but I was like, oh my gosh, if they don't talk quicker, I'm going to lose my mind. I will lose my mind. And I want to keep listening to them, but they're driving me crazy. They talk so slowly. So 6 months later, 7 months later, I'm watching another YouTube video with George Pransky, and I was like, he's not talking slowly. What's wrong with me? I slowed way down. What a relief. What a relief to not be full of head trash all the time and try to sort it out and whack-a-mole. And oh my gosh, it's just been a wonderful thing in my life personally. And as I say to anybody who listens, the three principles of my jam, and I'm spreading it. Just
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, just saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool to be able to slow down
Yeah.
and it's what's really that's also really cool that people might not understand when I'm going to say this is to really know that you're sped up. Like
Yes.
to be able to realize, oh, okay, now I'm just I got too much going on here. Okay, now let me slow it down.
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
I can just chill. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
And really
And
do.
not only for the sake of chilling, not only for the
Yeah.
sake of slowing down, but for the sake of whatever's going on when you're that sped up is kind of not very useful or helpful to you or humanity in general. It doesn't quote unquote work. So it's not only, oh, I need to chill out and take a deep breath and feel more relaxed and comfortable. That's real, for me, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm just going, oh my gosh. I'm sped up. This is just not a good use of time or money or anything. So I kind of think of it as shifting my internal eyes from whacking those moles to just kind of sitting back and kind of really physically, to some degree, feeling like, all right, I'm going back into my innate wellness.
I
It's
remember
always there.
but sometimes also I remember I before I got really, my grounding and understanding into this, I would look for coaching. And I remember that someone coached me and I was talking to this person, and this person says, and I was telling her all my problems, I was worried about this and I was worried about that, and this was happening, and what if this happens? And I would like, this is like the kind of thing that I would talk to her about. And she said, Jasmine, let me ask you, like I'd been having many calls with her and I would eventually slow down, but then when I'd come back, I would be back to the speed that I was. And then I'd talk to her and I'd slow down. And at one point she kind of looked at me and she said, Jasmine, she says, do you think that you have to worry?
Mm. Great question.
And I was like, I think so. Like, I was like, yeah, I think so. She says, okay, well, why do you think you have to worry? Well, I said, if I don't worry, then how am I going to ensure that I'm going to remember to do things, or I'm going to remember not to do things, or I'm going to, if I don't worry, I'm just going to, and she was like, really? And it took me a while to get, but it is true that I totally thought, like I thought also that if something happened that I disagreed with or that I felt was wrong, I had to be mad, right? I had to
Oh,
get mad. Um, I had to worry. I had to stop speaking to people if they were not nice.
yeah.
Like there was all of these things that I thought that I had to do. And
Rules. Sounds like you had a lot of rules.
yeah, rules. And but if I didn't do it, like then there was a problem with me. So you know how tightly wound I was? you know, it was kind of like, and I still see stuff, like they still show up, like some stuff I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Wait, that's not true, you know?
right, right. Somebody, I don't know where I heard it this week, and maybe it was a download that I got. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that somebody else said it, that if you're chewing your fingernails and anxious and worried and running scenarios about like, oh, what if that happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? That sense of being sped up and heart racing and chewing your fingernails literally or figuratively because you want to prepare for the inevitable or the thing that might be disastrous or whatever. Such a qualitative difference between that sensation of going forward and making a list of, oh, if I better be careful because that could happen, that could happen, that could, versus let's just say something like a baseball comes flying. I'm in front of a window right now. A baseball comes flying in the window and runs over my head. I could have never really anticipated that necessarily. But when I sit here and go, oh my gosh, somebody just put a baseball through my window, and what should I do? But like that, worrying about said baseball that just flew in over my head would not be what I would be doing. I'd be like, holy crap, what the heck, honey, can you please help? Somebody just threw a baseball. And I go, hold on a minute, let me clean up the glass and like, I would get into action because my point is that we always do what needs to be done in the moment when it needs to be done. Something happens, we run if we need to run.
Yeah.
We take care of it. We call the cops. We stop, pull the pie out of the oven if the whole thing's in flames. We always do what we need to do in that moment. And that's such to me, a lovely distinction about whenever something comes up that needs my attention, I have never failed myself to do I might do it differently the next time, but I've always taken action in the moment when something needs to be done. And it's not necessarily something I ever planned. Like, oh, if your pie starts to burn in your oven on September
Where's the list?
26th.
Where's
Yeah,
the list? What do I
right,
have to
right,
do?
right. What do I have to do? Like it doesn't happen. And then the other thing I talk about with my clients is, what your um coach said to you, like, do
Yeah.
you have to worry? Is that
Yeah.
really? You're like, really? Really? And you were like, yeah, I think I do. I say to my clients, can you look back over the past 3 weeks, 6 months, a year, however long you want, and give me the exact number of things that you did worry about and created a scenario about that actually happened? Really, really, really hard to come up with something that actually materialized.
Yeah.
And then I say, what would you do with all those hours if you had them back where you weren't running scenarios? what would you do with it? I mean, it's like, it's very transactional. It's very like, as solid as the spiritual principle can be, that's pretty solid to say, yeah, I was on Google like 27 hours worrying about my carburetor, trying to figure out how to get the cheapest carburetor. And is your well, it actually did fall off, and I took it to the local garage down the street and they fixed it. And I haven't thought about it. Did you do any of one of the 75 things that you looked up on Google? No, I actually didn't. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I
So
think
interesting.
that creativity is also innate. Like, like it's
Yeah.
we're all creative. We all have, bursts of inspiration when we're out of our heads, because we can trust that whatever happens, we're going to deal with whatever we need
Yeah.
to deal with.
Right.
I was talking with a client the other day. So this client has this event every year. So every year, same event. Every year, fantastic event. Like every year, successful event. And every year, she stresses her brains out.
Yeah.
What should I
Sure.
do? How
Sure.
many people are going to come? She loses sleep. And she is the most creative person I've seen. And I was having a conversation with her, and I was like, I mean, if you would stop worrying, I mean, I can't even imagine what you would create, just because what you've already created and you're worrying.
Right. There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And if you're, running the Rolodex and worrying and worrying and worrying and worrying, yeah, if you could put that down and push it to the side and trust and hope that things are going to change, that thing that you'll figure out this new project that's on the side. Yeah, I mean, the creativity that human beings are endowed with is pretty impressive, right? And kind of we know that the old, as we say in the principles, there you are in the shower and you go, oh my gosh, that's what I should do about that concern or that issue, or where I'm going to go to college, or where my kids should go to college, or my next venture. It just it comes when there just isn't so much
Yeah.
going on. It's hard to hear the voice. One of the people you mentioned, our friend David Cotterill, he and I are working together on the project, and you and he were talking very clearly about the fact of his perspective as a man of faith. And so I share that faith with him. And there's a verse that comes out of our wisdom book, the Bible, that says, the still small voice of God. Now, whether you believe in whatever, that biblical Trinitarian God or not, everybody knows what that still small voice of wisdom. And if you're just running scenarios and it's so loud in there,
Can't
it's
hear
very
it.
hard to hear that. Very hard to hear that. Um,
Yeah.
but it's always available. It's always available. It's part of the woodwork. One of the things that I love about the principles in nursing is that, have you heard the term homeostasis before?
Not sure I have.
Yeah, so homeostasis is a clinical term or a healthcare term that says the body is always in a state is always going for homeostasis, meaning let's keep moving forward. Let's make sure that this body has enough oxygen, that she's taking enough with that last breath, and she's expelling enough carbon dioxide. We want to keep everything moving so that she stays awake and alert and she's not falling off her chair because she doesn't have enough oxygen. So homeostasis, and oh, she ate lunch about an hour ago. So everything should be down in my small intestine by now, and the proteins would be there's a lot going on in a human body to keep us upright, listening, speaking, running a Zoom call, etc. And so that generically is called homeostasis. And the beautiful thing for me that I love about the principles is no one ever told me that my psychological part of my life also was driving toward homeostasis. My mind and heart are always trying to say, you don't need to worry about that. I know you're worried about the baseball coming in the window now because you talked about it 20 seconds ago, okay. Like there's always some sort of a homeostasis of thinking, of the mind, of the brain. And that is inside out. It's baked in, it's built in, it's part of the structure that I have. And so in the last 5 or 6 weeks, how many times have I changed what I call myself as a three principles person? 75 times. I don't know. But I think I finally landed on it. I'm a psychological health educator. Period. Full stop. I like that because psychological health, everybody wants to feel psychologically healthy and not stressed and not upset and not overwhelmed and not on burnout. People kind of want that. And psychological health is sort of like if I was to say gut health educator or cardiac health educator, people go, "Oh, I know what she does. Oh, I know what she does." And I feel like psychological health educator is, forgive me the expression, but is not very woo-woo, but man, is it woo-woo. You know what I mean? Really helping people understand and
Yeah,
get what
and you
they're
know,
created for and built for. Yeah.
we've been talking about three principles and three principles and three principles, and I mean, a lot of people who are listening to us are people that understand the three principles. And I'm trying to reach an audience of people who don't know what the three principles are. So I try not to say the words you and I. Well, I mean, this is what happened, but I try because, and I'm going to tell you why. Because people hear that, like they hear that, they don't understand it, and they push you aside
Yeah,
and they
sure.
close up and then they move on without giving it a chance.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I get that.
But
Totally.
if you, like you said, like if the podcast would be okay, we're going to talk about psychological health, people, it's like it's well received.
Yes.
Do you know
Yep.
what I mean? I
Yep.
think that
Yeah.
people will understand it better. But every single one of us have been using the three principles and have not known. So
Correct.
you are not
Correct.
saying the words, but trust me,
Right.
it it's just you've been using it.
Right.
It's part of
It's
you.
it's inevitable. It's inevitable. And the interesting thing is that that we've been brought up in our culture, in our North American westernized culture, and I think a lot of places in the world have grown up to say if you have stress or discomfort in your life, you must figure out what it is and minimize it, not realizing that the only reason that appears to be stressful or is stressful to you is because of the lately I've been saying is the score that I give it. Oh, that's a 10. Oh boy. Oh, my husband's literally been out of work since April.
That's
He
a
got,
20. That's a 20.
right. That's a 20. And the scale's only 1 to 10. So, yeah. No, but,
Yeah.
right. That is what we've been dealing with. And I know he had that job for 17 years at the university. And I know pre-principles that would have been it's all over the world, all over the internet. There's a whole science of stressful things are given scores. Moving, very high stress. Getting
Yeah.
married, very high stress. Getting divorced, very high. So there's some font of wisdom, some external um, whatever, academic that says these are the scores, and job loss is right up there. So yeah, you are. All I know is for myself, I don't know what it's going to look like for us to have two incomes again, or us to have what we need 100% of the time. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I completely believe that it's going to happen, whether I chew my fingernails about it or I don't. So I don't give it too high of a score. And I know for a fact that if it had happened before I was aware of the principles, sorry, aware of how my mind
Oh,
worked, the homeostasis of my psychological health, before I knew how it worked, I would have given, like you said, a 20. Now I don't, I would say on a daily basis, it's a 2 or a 3.
yeah.
It just doesn't rise to that level. Would I like to have a double income and look at my bank account, have it be 2 or 3 times higher than it is? Yeah, sure. I would love that. But that's not the way it is right now.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
goes from it goes from I'm going to say pre-principles. Oh, I would like to have a house and, the picket fences and nice door and all of this. And then pre-principal is like, but I don't have it. So I'm miserable and my life sucks. To, I'd like to have that.
Right.
I don't have it. And let me go record a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
Let me go enjoy my life. Let me hang out with my dog and pet my
yeah,
dog and let me, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's
It is so much simpler.
I think that it's such a, I mean, it's just for me, it's all about conversations. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why I love doing this podcast because I have conversations with all of these people and we're talking about a bunch of different stuff, but we're talking about the same thing.
About one thing,
And
right?
yeah, we're still talking about one thing and essentially it's, you know, peace of mind and freedom. I mean,
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
in this little short podcast that I did, that's what I was saying. I was like, for me, it's all about freedom. I want to be free. I've always hated being caught. I've always hated being stuck.
Mm.
Like if my father would say, "Don't go there," I'd be like, "I'm gonna go." If my mom would say, "Don't do that," I'm like, "I'm gonna do it," right? But and that was kids, like as a kid. But as I grew up, I felt like that and I felt like that, and my mother wasn't saying anything, my father wasn't saying anything, and I was like, why the heck am I feeling like that? And that's when I started seeing that I was feeling like that because I had my thinking was keeping me trapped in my life.
Yes. Yes. So
Like,
powerful. Yep.
so I mean,
Yep.
if you
Yep.
can,
Hmm.
and that had nothing to do with anybody outside of me. Because the second that it was somebody outside of me, I'm sorry about the word. I don't know if you swear, but I'm going to say it.
Go
I
for it.
was fucked,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was when it was about somebody else, if it
Yeah.
was my dad does this and I'm fucked because I
Yeah.
can't do anything about him. I
No.
can't change him. I can't make him do anything.
No.
Sometimes his nurses call me and they go, you should talk to your father about this. And I'm like, do you know that I have absolutely no power over my father? Like, there's nothing that I can say that will make him do anything. It has to go from inside out.
Inside out. That's right.
Right. So it's
That's
kind of
right.
like, guys, look from within,
Yeah.
look at what you are doing, and find that freedom that is right there. It's
Hmm.
right there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, totally. It is the answers are accessible because of the way that we're created and built. We weren't dumped on this planet to stumble around and trip around. We're uniquely prepared, physically, you know, emotionally, mentally. We have everything that we need to proceed in life. And sometimes we get, stuck and we need help or whatever. Obviously, there are things that can come up that are loom large. I'm not saying that, but I do know that my body's uniquely prepared to calibrate the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide that I'm taking in as we've been speaking on this podcast. I've never, ever once ever had to sit there and go, oh, I wonder, you think I just took in enough oxygen? Not sure. I mean, I hope so. Oh boy, I sure hope that my kidneys are making urine right now. What if they're not? What if my kidneys aren't working? Gee whiz, what, blah, 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 blah.
There.
But that's what we've been trained to do with our thoughts.
Psychological, like,
Yeah, we've been trained to get our hands all in it, up in there and on top of it and switch it around and blah, 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 as opposed to saying, I'm really worked up right now. I really gotta pee. My bladder is full. I gotta pee. I'm very uncomfortable. I'm
yeah,
very uncomfortable with anxiety right now. I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that my children are not getting good grades. I don't really like this feeling. I don't like the feeling of having a full bladder either.
yeah,
But with time and taking some action, right? So maybe taking some action is going to go, guys, can we sit down and talk about your homework? That could be the action. That could be me going to the bathroom, right?
yeah.
That could be, or just, you know, letting things go. the baseball scenario coming through the window. You and I could get all worked up about something. We're really worried or upset. I know you're Canadian. You're not probably that worried about my election, but I'm a little bit
No,
worried
not.
about my election. Yeah, I know. So we could talk about that, and I could be getting worked up and worked up, and then the baseball comes in, and I'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute, let me go clean up the glass." And
Yeah,
then we
you
come
forgot
back, and you
about the
go,
election.
what were we talking about? Oh, the election. Yeah, I don't care about that.
Uh,
So how's your garden growing? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's that quick,
yeah,
that quick. And we've all experienced it. We all know what it's like to have things come and look really big and exciting and then go. We all know what that's like. And that's our homeostasis, our equilibrium, our balance, our natural balance at work. That's the way it works. And no one ever told me until I listened to Slow George and Slow Steve Chandler tell me
yeah.
that years ago. But yeah, yeah,
Wendy, guess what? We like it flew by. We
it did.
basically did what we did. So I wanna thank you very much for accepting my
Good,
invitation.
great conversation.
Cool
Great
chat.
conversation.
We did
Yeah.
see, I told you we didn't talk anything about what I thought we were gonna talk.
Yeah.
That's what I do, guys. So you
That's what
have to wait another episode
that's
for
right.
what I thought we were gonna talk about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Before we leave, do you have a website? Like if people want to reach out to you, where do they?
Yes, I do. I do. I just wanted to also just say that I told you there were three projects about nurses in case there are any nurses listening. One is that the podcast is going to come, two nurses and a therapist. Keep your eye out on your favorite podcast areas. The second thing is that I'm going to be starting a peer support group. And I'm not sure what day of the week it's going to be, but a peer
Okay.
support group that meets twice a month for nurses specifically. And then the third thing is that we're going to be bringing a transformative listening project to hospitals in the area. Myself and Lori Carpenos, transformative listening, which is another word for deep listening. Some people in the community know the word deep listening, etc. So we're pretty
Yeah.
excited about that. My website is forwardwithwendy.com. So forwardwithwendy.com.
Fantastic.
So I'd be happy to have anybody reach out in that way. I have a newsletter that I send out a couple times a week. That's I try to keep it lighthearted and funny, and I'm told that I'm hitting that button, so that's good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It was really fun to talk with you.
We're gonna look forward to seeing your podcast, and I'm sure my friend's gonna invite you to his podcast, so we'll see uh,
Oh, okay.
how that goes. I'm gonna get that set up for you.
Okay.
All right,
Okay. All
everybody
right.
else listening, I'm gonna say, dream it, dare it, do it, live the life you want, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye,
All
guys.
right. Take care.